program. We're growing, we're getting bigger. And to do that and to kind of cover all bases, we're launching a YouTube channel, The Locker Room with Coach Blu Robinson. Episode will be posted here shortly. So athletes, there's lots to be going on in 2019. We're a brand new year. It's exciting. But even better today, we've got a guest in the studio today, and you've heard from him just not too long ago, a little over a month or so ago. But he was sharing the stage, and we wanted to bring him back and give him his own platform because he's got a great story. Brad and I are colleagues up at Mountain Peak Recovery. He thinks he's just a chef, but really he's like a counselor, therapist, and chef, all that kind of stuff, all balled in one. Brad, thanks so much for being willing to come down here and chat with us again.
Yeah, of course.
It's good to have you, man. The last time you were here with Willie, you guys were talking about True Alliance and some of the stuff you guys were doing there. But you and I have had a lot of time to talk about specific things that you're interested in, not just in the world of culinary arts, but also just like in the world of recovery. And for you listeners that are starting with this podcast, go back and listen to that podcast. But for the sake of those who haven't yet, Brad, tell us a little bit about yourself, a little bit about where you came from, how your addiction started, and really kind of how you started pulling yourself out of that. You've got an awesome story, and I think we just barely scratched the surface of it last time.
Okay, well, I won't go into like extreme detail of my my background of like where I grew up because I already did that. But yeah, again, like grew up in a big family, typical LDS family. Sixth child of 7 kids, youngest boy, and growing up, I enjoyed the religious background that I grew up in, and because I was from a different state, California, and
what part of California were you from?
Southern California.
The best part, right?
San Fernando Valley, yeah.
Nice.
I looked up to my dad a lot. He was a lead PD sergeant on the SWAT team.
Man, I can't imagine what that was like then. That was probably intense.
Yeah, I mean, I was a kid. We were 13 when I was 13, excuse me, when he retired, and
yeah, I think that sometimes we don't realize that when we have parents that are in that kind of a situation, probably a little bit stressful too.
Yeah, and now, I mean, nowadays I have a brother that's a police officer now here in Utah County, and
awesome.
So it's a little stressful now that I'm older. I know the reality of those things.
Exactly.
And seeing all these cops that are being shot and or killed on.
We just had one. We just lost an officer here just a couple days ago.
Just yesterday, I think it was.
Yeah, that's intense.
Yeah, and so like it's even more real because I was a kid. My dad was an officer. I didn't really digest it, I guess, or really comprehend what the seriousness behind it. I just thought it was kind of cool.
Yeah.
And I actually really wanted to be like my dad. I wanted to be a cop too, which. I took a different path in life.
Yeah.
But I always kind of joke about when I tell my story of my service commitments. But
I like it.
And a lot of it kind of held me back from that was my health issues I was born with. It kind of made me feel indifferent a lot. It's a rare genetic disease, mainly affects the kidneys, without going into extreme detail. A lot of science behind it. But me and my older brother Brandon have it. I had a 7. And and he still pursued his dream though of being a cop. And because in California, I guess the requirements, because he had a kidney transplant, they didn't let him do that in California. But I guess the requirements here are a little bit different, and he still pursued it. Even took a pay cut to become a cop. And
wow.
So it's kind of inspiring when you look at stuff like that, and it's really cool that he still pursued that.
Yeah, I like that too, Brad, because a lot of times, we give up on our dreams so easy, and sometimes we think we have a disability or a disadvantage, look at it as a weakness, but it's really not. I mean, you've overcome some heavy stuff, and it sounds like your brother has too, but I think sometimes we got to remember that there's passion and purpose, and then there's like existence, right? I think that's rad that you can kind of see that level of like, yeah, there's passion my brother had, not to even do a pay cut,
Right.
That's cool, but you'll carry on though. So you guys moved out here to Utah when you were how old?
I was 13, and
critical age.
Right. And I didn't want to move. I just started junior high, so I only went through my whole sixth grade year out there in California, and then we moved. Now to start fresh in new school, and my brother above me and my sister younger than me. Sister had to start again 1 more year in elementary. My brother 1 more year in junior high or middle school, whatever it's called in your school district. But and then me, the young kid in the school again. And I'd been to Utah plenty of times. I have family up here and visited all the time.
Great place to visit, but you're like,
Right.
do we really want to live
Right,
there?
and I just remember the drive here, or moving here, and just thinking, where are my parents moving to?
Yeah, like, are we gonna stop here soon?
Right,
Yeah.
and I mean, Highland, that's where I moved to, was Highland, was a lot, smaller. I mean, it's developed a lot over the last 18 years. And there was nothing.
Culture shock times 10.
Oh yeah, and having every neighbor religious background was very culture shock to me.
Yeah.
Seeing everyone in my neighborhood on Sunday.
Mm-hmm.
And it was maybe over the years we had one or two neighbors in the neighborhood that weren't LDS, but
Yeah.
that was very rare. Coming from a background in California where we actually had two neighbors in our neighborhood, one way down the street and one next door that are actually LDS as well,
Yeah.
which was really weird.
It's rare.
Yeah,
Mhm.
really rare. And and going from that to moving to Utah and luckily I kind of had this summer kind of develop and meet some people in my neighborhood. But I remember my first week or so in school, starting in 7th grade, there was a couple kids thought I was someone else.
Oh yeah?
It was like, and I guess I just always had one of those faces,
Common, yeah.
common face, but kind of, just a new kid in school. I mean, if anyone's moved as a kid knows that feeling.
Mm-hmm.
And not only knew a few people that lived in my neighborhood, but I mean, over the years I've definitely grown to love Utah.
Yeah.
But and another thing, moving here, the school district I lived in, Alpine School District, they had different requirements. Like I'd take meds during the day for my disease I was born with, and you don't go to the office to take your meds. They didn't have you do that here. And so that's why I did in California. I just went to the office. They had meds there for me. I took them.
Yeah.
And so here I am at lunchtime trying to sneak and take my meds without any of my peers to see me because I don't want to. I mean, it's
There's no way. That's
yeah.
crazy, man. Because that's like a ton of different people that are trying to come talk to you, be around you, and you're like trying to keep the low key, like kind of. That's
Right.
probably impossible. Like, hey, what's that? What are you doing?
Yeah. So dealing with that, I kind of slowly missed my afternoon doses.
Mm-hmm.
And which didn't help.
No.
And through the years, it kind of did some damage. And because I didn't use any other substance to try besides my prescription medication or abuse those
Mm-hmm.
until way later. And even in getting into high school, my whole sophomore year, I was on peritoneal dialysis.
Wow.
Pretty much that is, you have a tubing coming out of your stomach and
Mhm.
you're hooked up to a machine every night. And that machine does what your kidneys are supposed to
Yeah,
do.
it cleans everything up.
Yep,
Gotcha.
exactly.
Okay.
And so I had to be home every night and do that. And
Kind of kill your social life, I'd imagine, huh?
yeah, and luckily I had one friend that could stay the night sometimes, and
Mhm.
even his mom had issues with him staying over other places, but we meet our way into it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I was a really deep sleeper back then too, so my poor mom had to put a baby monitor in my room because if I rolled over the tubing, they would alarm and the machine would stop.
Oh yeah.
And I wouldn't wake up because I was such a deep
So you're
sleeper.
like, I'm out.
And so she had to put a baby alarm or monitor in my room,
Mm-hmm.
so she could hear it and wake her up to come tell me to roll over.
Brad, get up, move over. Yeah, that's awesome.
And I'm
though.
definitely not like that anymore, but and then I remember in my biology class we had to do this big project on a disease, and my
Mhm.
teacher let me do it on my own disease I was born with,
Hmm.
which was cool in that aspect 'cause I learned a lot more about it that I didn't know about.
Right.
But when it came to the time to present it, she knew I was on dialysis. She knew I had this tube in my stomach, and she actually made me show the class.
She's like, show and tell.
Yeah, right?
Oh, man.
And it just really took me back. I was just like, you could tell I was nervous. I don't want to pull up my shirt and show this tube sticking out of my stomach.
Dude, yeah, very rarely do you
Yeah.
have the opportunity in school to like rip your shirt off and flex your muscles,
Right,
right? I
I'm
mean,
like this
come on.
15, 16-year-old kid.
If I'm not mistaken, that's usually what nightmares are made of. Remember
Right,
waking up,
right.
being naked in school, you're like, what's going on? You're like, now this is for real. Okay, yeah. And so she probably thought like, oh yeah, you're gonna want to really get them involved, but you're like, this is a little odd, lady.
Right, and like right before that, before I had to have the surgery, have that tubing put in, you know, I had started wrestling. I went through all the hell weeks for that, and then all of a sudden I found out my kidneys weren't working anymore. I had to put on dialysis, and you know, and at the time I just stuffed everything. I never dealt with it. That's kind of how I learned, just by watching other men or people I looked up to, and are generally just in society as a whole that men were supposed to do. That's why I took it. That's what I thought you were supposed to do.
Right.
And eventually, you know, through the years, and eventually at 17, just barely 17, I got a kidney transplant. My mom was a match, and she donated her and gave her kidney to me, which was, you know, a big blessing and a cool thing that she was able to do for me. And my parents are actually matches in their own, because my dad donated to my brother when he was 16 as well.
Wow.
And my brother's oops.
Yeah, you're good.
He
keeps people awake that are listening.
Right. He you know, he had his for about 16 years until he got his second one, but and so my parents are a pair together, you know. But
that's awesome.
That first kidney only lasted for about, I want to say, year and a half, but at the very beginning I got very sick. I guess my mom had some extra blood vessels on her kidney, and I couldn't keep anything down. I was like throwing up all the time, and I got down to like 106 pounds as a 17-year-old.
Like wrestling weight beyond that, gotcha.
Yeah. And so eventually it was kind of a miracle type thing. That's how I look back, a lot of things are in my life. But they had me put a feeding tube in me, and that's a horrible experience. They spray a flavor, like it's kind of flavoring spray in the back of your throat, so it kind of numbs it.
Oh, jeez.
But it's not.
It's not the flavor that's on the can, is there?
Well, it's not really just that. It's just it's a weird sensation of sticking this thing up your nose and down the back of your throat.
Yeah.
And they told my mom, he can't throw that up, you'll be fine, and we never even used it.
Really?
Yeah, and that night, my mom stopped me some food on the way home, and I kept it down for a while, but then I threw it up that night, and I had my mom called our neighbor that was a nurse, and I had her just cut it, and I just pulled it out.
Holy cow.
And from then on out.
How old were you, 17?
I was like 16, 17.
Wow, man.
Yeah, and from then on, like, I kind of got better. My health got a lot better, and you know, I think the thing that I wasn't very diligent about, you know, making sure I did all my blood work to keep up on my labs, and so they could see if anything was going on. I wasn't very good about that. And so.
Because you're a typical teenager as well. I mean,
exactly, you know, and so they kind of missed it. Eventually that kidney kind of started failing on me, and I think, looking back, my mom, I think, thought I was using something after she found out I was later on, but I wasn't. That was the tipping on the edge of what kind of led me towards using substances. Right when that kidney started failing, I'm like, oh, here we go.
Like, what's the point of all this?
And I already had a couple of friends that moved in the neighborhood, and I really related to them. And they weren't like peer pressuring me into it. They're just like, hey, it's here if you want to try it. Yeah. And I instantly fell in love with it, because all my health issues, all my life issues
didn't matter anymore, huh?
Didn't matter, they're gone. And that's the way things lasted for about 6 or 7 years. And they got progress, and they just got worse and worse, with deeper and deeper down that rabbit hole. Went from marijuana to painkillers to street opiates. So a little bit of uppers, but mostly opiates and downers. And through those years, like, when I was on dialysis for the second time, you know, I was lucky I even graduated high school. Halfway through my senior year, they actually started sending a tutor to my house, my school district.
Oh, wow.
Which made it so I was able to graduate, which was awesome. But I missed out on those opportunities a lot. Seniors got to go do. Like, you know, senior ditch day and a lot of things they do. And I totally missed out on all of those.
You know, and that's a perfect recipe even for addiction, man. You know, and you know, it's interesting you talk that way, Brad, because, you know, so many times, I know in treatment, you've probably heard this a million times too, that a lot of times, you know, there's an attempt to kind of vilify parents, like, what did your parents not give you, and that's why. And that's not always the case. And I think a lot of people don't understand that for you specifically, It wasn't. Your parents, man, they gave you guys kidneys.
Right.
You know, they did everything they could for you. But it was that part of like that I'm missing out, I'm less than, I'm not able to do this, that sadness, that depression, you know, that got you. And I mean, I think sometimes listeners, you should take note of this, that there's so many different ways that addiction starts. And you know, so many people probably think, oh, well, Brad, why would you even dare tinker with that, with kidneys that way? It's like, none of that mattered. Right. You know, and I think that that's kind of an interesting thing, because I've never heard you speak ill of your family, ever. And I think that's part of like who you are, just that person that can see things a little bit deeper. We'll get into that in a minute. Right. But it's good to hear, listeners, that you know, sometimes your addictions can come from, you know, great families. I mean, it doesn't have to be that you were beaten or abused or abandoned. Sometimes it's outside influences and factors that are way advanced for your young mind. So it makes a lot of sense.
Right.
So when did they start seeing, and when did you start kind of feeling like, man, I'm not doing too hot with all this? When did you start leaning towards?
It took a few years, actually. You know, at first I thought I was just experimenting, trying to find myself, you know,
right.
Being that just barely adult, because I was about 17, 18 when I started using substances. But you know, it took quite a few years, because at first, you know, it was just pot, it was just marijuana, not hurting anyone. It's a plant, God gave us this to use.
And we all use that excuse at least once, right?
Yeah, right.
So funny.
But and that's all I did. I mean, I really never kept a job at that point. But you know, over the years though, I would get a job, and I would say I was that, you know, what's that word, that
it's like special K?
You know, like productive addict.
Oh yeah.
You know,
functional
addict. Thank you. And you know, that's the way I was able to keep a job. But you know, through those last first 4 years, I was on dialysis and using, and then I got, you know, the pain meds, and so my drug dealer just wasn't the guy down the street, the guy up in the city, you know, I would call. It was also a guy with a degree, like, wrote me little prescriptions.
Absolutely.
And you know, it's when I started noticing it is when I stopped. I don't know if I shared this on my last podcast, and I almost was attempting that suicide attempt. And the fact that I didn't feel anything, that was like a big wake-up call, like no sadness, no emotion at all, really. And I wasn't even, from what I recall, I wasn't even high.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Man, you know, brother, that to me is interesting. The listeners, you should take account of this, because, you know, Brad, I've heard that twice now this week. You know, there was a person that we both know that was, you know, kind of struggling with some suicidal thinking, and it was interesting because of what transpired. You know, requesting for help on public on social media. No one comes to the rescue. Inquiring how to purchase, you know, an instrument to end life, and tons of people are like, well, yeah, you can go get one of those over here. How dark does it have to be to like start considering like self-preservation out the window? Like, you must have been in a bad spot to even think, it's probably not good for me to be here. Like, how'd you come out of that? Like,
honestly, it was my family. They, I think my mom.
Did they notice, or did you say something?
Honestly, I don't know if they. I still actually haven't told them about that.
Oh, well, guess what?
Yeah. Well, you know, and it's one of those things, like, I haven't told them. So at first, when I first got clean, I think my parents had that mentality, as most parents would.
Yeah.
Where did I go wrong, you know?
Of course.
But, and I think now they could probably hear it in that part of my story now and be okay with it. I don't know if they've listened to my last podcast I did with you, but, you know, I'm pretty sure it's on there.
Yeah.
A little bit more detail. But, you know, it took a while. I think my mom actually found some of my paraphernalia, or I may have been, like, hunched over on a small couch like this with my paraphernalia in my hand, and she actually came to
literally caught you red-handed.
Yeah, and I was nodded out, and she was trying to get me, you know, to come take my nighttime meds, and she didn't know what she was looking at. She hadn't seen anything like that. And I was so out of there, just kind of like stuffed underneath my couch.
Yeah.
But that was the first time, like, the stepping stone to go into IOP, that I wasn't court ordered to be there. You know?
Right, so you decided, like, intensive outpatient treatment.
That's what she said.
The magnitude of my parents' intuition.
Right. And,
but so you went to treatment. She said, hey, treatment. You're like, all right.
Yeah, and I thought, let's try it out. But the problem was, it was IOP. and I only went twice a week, and I still had all the access to all my outside friends and connections, and so
going through the motions.
Yeah, and I remember she had found some of my paraphernalia again while I was in there, and she's like, "You need to get honest," and I really half-assed the truth when I told my group about it. And this one kid who wasn't even in this program for my drug of choice, and he called me out on it. It's like, "You know, I have some friends that do your DOC, and I'm not saying you're lying, but I can't believe you're only using on the weekends," you know? That's what kind of my excuse was. And I'm like, "Yeah, honestly, it depends on how much money I can get or find, really." And the therapist looks at me, "I'll meet with you later on this week. I don't even know what to believe."
Wow.
And I did. I met with him later on the week, and that's when I got the pamphlet to a program down in Payson, Utah.
Nice.
And we actually checked it out that day, and it was weird because it was on the same street as my aunt and uncle, where like I used to go visit as a kid from California. And we checked it out, but I didn't actually check in right then because I had some Social Security income money coming the next week.
Absolutely, priorities, right?
And I look back now, though, I'm actually grateful I got that last little binge out of my way, because, you know, it wasn't a reservation I had left, you know.
Right, by the time all was said and done, you were done.
Yeah, so I actually checked in on, I think it was September 13th, 2011. But my clean date's actually September 14th, because I used, you know, after midnight before I went to treatment, of course.
It's so interesting.
Right.
That's so interesting. You know, that's you know, May 2011 was when Addict II Athlete started, and I remember the atmosphere back then was kind of intense, and there's a lot of, I don't say darkness, but the resources were kind of few and far between. So tell me about that experience, because you gravitated towards the 12 steps, and you know, that's one thing that I think it's always worth me repeating when we bring this up, and that's, you know, a lot of times in 2011 when we first started Addict II Athlete, it was it was the first of its kind, and it was very odd, and people were really upset that we were doing it this way. And the word on the street was that Addict II Athlete doesn't like the 12 steps, and you know, we had a couple of people come in from 12 steps and tear us apart a little bit, but a lot of it was because they didn't know what we were doing. And that's why I really appreciate who you are and what you're about, because you are very much engaged in that industry, in that group, and I love it because you can kind of help people say, "Oh no, I know that guy. He likes the 12 steps," because I do. I love them. There are some things that we do different here, but that's good. But I respect the 12 steps for what they are and for how they were established, and I really appreciate the way that you respect them too, because how many times in group have you been back there in the kitchen? I'm like, "Brad, what do you think of this?" And I love it because you've got a movement with it. But tell me about your engagement into that community and why it resonated with you. Because listeners, there's more than one way to recovery. I say look at Addict II Athlete as your recreational, you know, / social part. Look at the 12 steps as your spiritual and like active part. And look at treatment as your therapeutic and emotional part. You've got this triad of recovery. And so I think sometimes people want to get camped into one, you know, one camp, one base camp, and you don't need to do that. But tell me a little bit about your engagement in it, what you discovered, what you learned about, and why it works so well with you.
Well, at first, you know, program I went to, they always took us outside, you know, meetings, 12-step meetings, and then also it was a 12-step based program. And so it was kind of thrown at me all at once. And I had been to, you know, 12-step meetings before, and I was through all those IOP programs where, you know, we had to go to them and get a little report card signed.
Yeah, that's how Addict II Athlete started.
Yeah, exactly.
Someone was forging their report cards.
I used to do the same thing.
Yeah.
And, you know, I never thought, you know, I had a problem earlier on, in my early using days, and I would get in trouble not to go. And, you know, I didn't understand them. I thought they were super weird meetings, you know, people are sharing all this stuff, and then we have to circle up and say this prayer.
Yeah, that's how,
And I was like, what is this? This is weird. And we're standing around holding hands, like, this is weird, you know. And so I didn't know how to feel about it when I first started going in treatment. And it was actually took a girl I was in treatment with, we were cleaning up dinner, And because I was doing the same thing I always did without even noticing it, I had gone through the motions, jumping through those hoops. I knew how to do that. I've been through so many, through ILP, through court twice, and graduated both times. So I knew how to put up a front.
Right.
And she just simply asked me why I'm here. At first, my first intention was wanting to just lash out back at her. But for some reason I listened to what she had to say to me. And it was a big turning point for me. And that's when I started actually really doing my assignments. And which they were, usually work through step 3 or 4 or 5 in treatment with your counselor. And when I actually started listening when I went to these outside meetings when they took us, and I actually started really noticing, wow, these people actually seem like they've changed their lives. And when I started going, after I got out of treatment and sober living, I finally worked up the courage to ask this guy to be my sponsor, and asked him, hey, I want this to be my home group, which is just here in Provo. And he's still my sponsor today. And
how many years ago?
It's almost probably been 7 years.
That's amazing.
Because I probably had 5 or 6 months when I finally asked him.
That's amazing.
It took me a few months after treatment to finally ask him, but and.
Brad, rewind a little bit. What was it about her question while you were cleaning up dinner that was a shift? Like you said, your initial response would have been to kind of lash out in anger.
Yeah.
Well, why didn't you? What was different? Did she ask you kind of cockeyed? Was there a tone in her voice? What was it that made you say, I'm done fighting, I'm going to answer her question this time for real?
It's been so long, but if I had to say an answer to that, it would probably be it was probably a higher power thing.
Yeah, I like that.
Because, the way I was only 24 years old. I was still a kid.
24-year-old know-it-all.
Yeah, right. And it was probably that simple fact of just calm voice telling me just listen to what she has to say. Try something new for a change.
Dude, I like that. And sometimes, listeners, we forget that sometimes it's so small. Right. I mean, I can rewind my tape right back down to the time that I'm like, I think I'm done. And yeah, you're right. I wish I could have taken better mental notes back then to kind of tell people this is what it was. But it's so unique, personal that you don't. But it's cool for you to remember that aspect of it, because that was a small aha moment, a turning point where you're like, maybe I better start listening a little more. And maybe it was probably what your higher power is saying, hey, turn the mirrors on.
Yeah, and then at the very beginning there was a certain 12-step fellowship I stuck with. But the first 2 years I went to all the anonymous programs that are available to me in Utah County. And that's why I tell everyone, if you don't know if this certain group's going to work, go to all of them.
Yeah.
Because you never know what you're going to hear. And I still go to some of the other ones. I mainly stick with the one. And I've branched out to other things since I've been clean for a few years now. But, at first, going into your question, I used to be strictly 12-step. And it took me a long time, because I used to hear things about A2A. And I think what kind of put a bad taste in my mouth, there was a couple guys that came and spoke at the first treatment center I worked at. And
I remember, because I know the treatment center you went to, and I remember getting a call from someone that I respected that worked there.
And I think it was probably my supervisor. And I talked to him about, because I wasn't there, I just heard from the clients and about the situation. And he's like, oh, I took care of it. That's because that's not what an A2A is about. That's not what Addict II Athlete's about. And he explained it to me. I'm like, oh, okay. It's right around the time I started getting introduced to Addict II Athletes, because we had to take the clients every Tuesday. And I think the first time when I didn't.
So you were a client there, and then lo and behold, you started working there.
I started working. I kind of jumped ahead.
That's great. It's good for listeners to know that that's who you were. I mean, it's you had the clean time, you had the understanding, you're like, I want to give this back. That's kind of what introduced you into the industry of treatment and recovery.
And I struggled with work for a while, because I had this work history gap. And right around I humbled myself to go work for Desert Industries, I kind of reached out to my old counselor and asked him, hey, let's try this tech thing out. And finally, hey, we have Tuesday nights available if you want to come work.
Come learn.
Yeah.
Think through some thrift store stuff.
Yeah.
I like it, man. It's humble.
Over the time I was working there, Tyler Pino came over and worked, and I think that's right around the time I started.
Yeah, that's
going
funny.
into A2A. And I think the first meeting we ever took the clients to, you were actually speaking at it, and I don't know if you swapped out on teaching the class or not at the time, and I was like, okay, this guy at Blu knows what he's talking about.
I kind of know what he's talking about, yeah.
You know?
I'm really making up as I go, to be honest.
It sounded good from what I remember.
Cool.
And I'm like, okay, and then through the years, like, especially the last few years, I've been like really trying to think, okay, so it means I need to branch out more, and it was actually True Alliance, so us coming to meet with you guys, that really kind of opened my eyes to it a little bit more, because I already was thinking about going, and we had met with your team and pitched our ideas to you guys, my state office. I mean, I started coming myself, and because I mean I've talked about it a lot, and when I go tell my story, like, there's not one avenue to find recovery.
Absolutely.
It's 12-step based or something else. Like, seek it out. Whatever you do, just run with it. Don't lose it.
Exactly.
And for me, it's just like, it's like there's 3 concepts in the 12 steps, or in any of the anonymous program. There's, willingness, there's open-mindedness, and honesty.
Yeah.
And if I'm not being open to be honest with myself,
you're not very willing.
About being willing to try new avenues of recovery out. Like, why? I'm being kind of closed-minded person.
Yeah.
And so it's like, well, and then a lot of the concepts and things I even hear at Addict II Athlete meetings, same thing I hear at 12-step meetings.
Yeah, those are real principles. Yeah, it
just
doesn't matter what modality. You're absolutely right. They're real.
And then there's simple things like, I mean, I could take a family member to an anonymous program fellowship meeting, but we're not allowed to really speak at them, and that's okay. I understand it. Yeah. But if I go take a family member like I did to A2A, my dad wanted to share, he could.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so that's what really is kind of a cool concept, really being able to bring your family members into it.
Yeah, and that was the reality of the team is, we have just as many people that don't use that do, and they learn from each other. But I also know that that's like doing 12 steps and then Al-Anon together. Right. But I also understand the philosophy of keeping them separate too, because sometimes there's such deep scars that they need to have people that don't understand addiction, without using, and that's what they need. And so Brad, it's so cool to hear you say that, because it's interesting how you started your story by talking about how kind of alone you felt and a few friends, because that is absolutely not who you are now. It's almost funny. The other day, I was looking at social media, watching on Facebook or something, and I saw that Judy Barricall had a friendship anniversary with you, and I'm like, how the freak does she know Brad? And it kind of hit me. I'm like, Brad, you are a golden thread through so many people in this program in recovery. How did you achieve that? I mean, how did you come from this, kid from California to really being someone that anyone in the sound waves of this message could call and say, I'm struggling, what do I do? I mean, dude, how did you become so popular in this industry? I'm curious. I like it.
I don't know, it just kind of happened, but, with Anonymous, the 12-step programs I'm involved with, at first, the first 2 years, I went to all of them, and people have been around for the last 7 years, they know who I am. Yeah. Or in and out of the rooms, at least. But what really got me, people getting to know me, is just getting involved. Yeah. The first convention I went to, a 12-step convention I went to, was back in 2012, and so I had a little over a year clean at the time, and I finally went to one of those, and I fell in love with it. Yeah. It was awesome. And so I love taking new people to them. Yeah. I've been to so many now.
You've done that for a few of our clients, and it's changed their life.
Yeah, and I'm grateful for it, because when you take someone, they're actually appreciating why they're there, and you can see it almost through their eyes. And people did that for me when I first got clean. Remember after meetings, people going out to eat or to a movie and
doing normal things, and you're like,
they're like, hey, why don't you come? Well, I don't really have money for that, and we didn't ask if you had money, we asked if you wanted to come, and it's just that principle,
I dig it.
Helping the next person out.
Well, I'll be honest with you. I mean, when I first started working up at Mountain Peak, it was pretty cool because we were reshaping the program and doing some things that were kind of out of the box, and it was awesome. But I remember there was a client who had just got there who had a friend pass away, and there was heavy hearts there. And I remember they're like, hey, you know, him and his family were really close to this kid, and he wants to go to the services, but we don't have anyone to take him. And I remember someone saying, well, let's have Brad take him. And I'm thinking, Brad, the guy that cooks the food, like, is he really gonna want to do this? And I always didn't say it out loud, but they called you in, and without a skip of the beat, and you were even going somewhere. You were like traveling soon thereafter, and it was gonna almost conflict with what you were doing, but it was like, you were like, yeah, I'll totally do that. And I remember just kind of sitting there thinking, holy crap, he didn't even get the ins and outs of this. He's just like, yeah, I'll do it. And then you came back and reported on what happened and how he went, and I'm thinking, good grief. And you did that over and over in the service and all that. And I'm like, this guy truly authentically lives step 12 daily, like daily. And that's rare because you can get burned out, but I've never seen you do that either. Like your service, Brad, it's authentic and it's real and it's genuine. And because of that, it's like, that's kind of why I think people know you, is because you're not in it for anything else other than to be of service, you know? And I thought, that's freaking awesome. I've seen you do it a million times, going to court dates with clients that, you know, you're familiar with, or whatever, taking them to the gym for crying out loud. It's like, I love that fact of your service out of your inconvenience. And I think that is the true essence, I think, of recovery. What say you about that?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, I was like, you know, I'm going along with what you said, you know, and give back was so freely given to me. And I do love service. I mean, I grew up being a Boy Scout. I probably learned that from my older brothers and my dad. And I'm trying to more branch out, not just from doing it inside of work or inside of my fellowship 12-step program that I'm involved in, just because like I feel like the community needs it too. Yeah. You know, I mean, also it's a, like I said last time, I think it's a selfish, but also selfless act. Absolutely. Because you are getting something out of it. Oh, for sure. You know, and so not everyone, I think they hear that and they might hear it wrong. I don't think everyone agrees with that. Well, do you remember there was a group that we had once, and we were trying to tell a client about that, and you were there, and we were talking about it, and we were saying he was trying to get us to understand that when you serve, you don't get anything out of it. I'm like, yes, you do, you know? And it's true, because we wouldn't be giving this podcast as a service to the listeners if we didn't find some kind of value in it. Oh, yeah. And so I like that, and it's true. I mean, it does help us more than it helps even the person receiving it. But Brad, I've watched you over the years, and I've just seen the humility that you carry, but that strength also. And to me, I'm thinking, God, what a cool like friendship to be able to just be able to rub shoulders with you. Because you know, like I said, it's kind of funny that we call you our chef up there, because you do so much more. You've got big plans. You got some stuff that we're going to be working on that's going to help this community beyond measure. But really kind of like, you know, going forward in your own recovery, you started getting into the culinary arts for a specific reason. And I love the fact that you'll share that with the clients too. Kind of what gravitated you toward that? Because there's so many metaphors in what you do for a living. And I don't know if you even know them all, but I've seen just the subtle things you do when you help provide substance for the clients. Why culinary arts? Why that job? What was it for you? Well, honestly, when I first got clean, like I said before, I struggled at work, and I was working through temp agencies. And right when I said earlier, when I started DI and started at Steps Recovery at Payson, I started school. I pursued culinary arts at MATC in Lehigh, and the reason behind that was because I'm like, well, what's a job, for instance, that people are always going to need to eat, for one, and I had an old friend that had been through the program, really enjoyed it, and I kind of enjoyed cooking a little bit growing up, but never really like pursued it really. I mean, I think I actually got not a failing grade, but not a passing grade in my cooking class in high school.
Yeah.
Mostly because I would ditch the class a lot. But,
yeah, it kind of works on your grade when you're missing that much.
Right. Oh yeah, and so it was kind of funny I actually pursued that, but it started out just being, just finding something that I love and enjoy and something to do for work or a career, and it kind of gravitated into, I'm creating these things, I'm taking these items or these, this recipe and combining it, making something out of it. And not only do that, you get to serve others by, a lot of times I don't eat up at work. I mean, I'll eat breakfast or whatever.
Yeah, I've noticed that.
But one, I want to make sure everyone gets the food of mine. I don't know if I made enough, but just like watching them and enjoying what I just created. It's kind of a cool feeling.
Well, it's awesome too. At the very end of client stay, when we have our little ceremonious goodbye, and it's awesome when they point you out specifically. And they're always like, "Thank you," but because it's more than just you preparing food. It's, "Hey, I need some help. Come with me." And something as small as like inviting them to go to the store with you is huge on their level. It's huge because it's like, they get to get out, of the day for a little bit, but it's more than that. It's like they get to, spend time with you. And I'm like, Brad, I'm gonna let you in on a little secret that not a lot of people know, and that's I like to spend a lot of time alone. I just do, because and in this industry and what I do, I'm always with people, so I value my alone time. And so there's been times when I think I've failed at bonding or building relationships because of that. I've never seen you do that. I've always seen you reach out for fellowship. Wherever there's an opportunity for you to teach or for you to serve, I've never seen you push it away. And I think that's rad, man. I think that's cool. Which is why some of the goals that you talk to me about, some of the things you want to do with your own talents, it's why it's going to work. But I think that's brilliant. But shifting gears a little bit now, you do a ton of service, and we can keep boosting and building Brad up here. But I love the fact that you do a lot of stuff in the community and things. What else are you doing in the community? We talked about True Alliance and kind of what you guys are doing there, but you do a lot of other stuff too. I mean, what do you find the most joy in when you're out there serving in these kind of calibers? What means the most to you?
Oh man,
I ask hard questions.
It's funny, like when I have not a client, but individuals that come up to me and they know my name, and I'm just like, okay, where do I know this person?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if they know. And a lot of times when it is, because I go to Utah County Jail once a month to take a 12-step meeting in there, and then I'm like, I'm sorry, I'm honest about it. I'm sorry, but where do I know you from? I don't know if I just know you from the rooms, or the fellowships, or if you're a past client. I'm thinking that to myself, and he's like, oh, you brought that meeting into the jail, dude. I really appreciate that. That's just a cool experience.
Yeah, man.
To see them outside of the jail, and doing it, living life and coming to a meeting that's helping boost them up.
Right.
Because a lot of times people walk out those doors and they just go right back to what they were doing before.
I know.
So I think this
amnesia. Crazy. Yeah, and it does. It's like temporary insanity. But you found value in sobriety. You found worth in starting to be honest with yourself. What do you think most people, Brad, struggle with when it comes to that inner belief? How come there's somebody that keep going back? I mean, because you and me and some of the other folks that we've had on this podcast, we can't really be anomalies. There's got to be something that kind of loops us all together. But what do you think it is? I mean, is it relationships with people? Is it service? What do you think keeps us moving? And so many other people just I can't do this. I'm not going to be able to do it. What is your own understanding of that?
Finding your purpose.
Yeah.
I mean, I for you, I know it's a few different things.
Yeah.
For me, I remember having a conversation with my brother-in-law, and I told him, I think I was still in treatment. I think I was on pass, for a holiday, because I was in treatment for all the holidays, and telling him, I was pretty sure I was right on that edge that I want to be able to see my nieces and nephews. And he looked at me and you're right.
Nice.
And it was eventually, he even only told me we were passing the cemetery, and told me we thought we were going to be visiting you there.
We thought for sure that's where you'd be. Yeah.
And it's stuff I needed to hear.
Mm-hmm.
And for me, my big purpose is, not only, I didn't want to be that uncle that none of my nieces and nephews knew. They just knew he's buried in American Fork Cemetery, for example.
Yeah, exactly.
And they didn't have any idea clue who he was, because a lot of my nieces and nephews luckily don't remember me that way, because a lot of them are really young, or they lived out of state, so they weren't around very much.
Didn't see it, yeah.
Yeah, and my big purpose is just, one, pursuing things I know will come true eventually, and just serving other people. Active service is big, like we talked about earlier. But just kind of living that legacy of recovery. I mean, yeah, I could sit here and say, yeah, I've lost a ton of people, but me staying sober another day, being clean another day, is kind of honoring them.
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
Yeah, it's that gift they give us of like, hey, I didn't make it. You carry the you carry the message. But you know what though? I think too, as I'm sitting here and hearing you say that too, is that Brad, and this is something I think a lot of people struggle with. You're a man of your word. If you say you're going to do something, you do it, and that's so rare, And I think, all right, those are things that I know your parents taught you, that you put on the back shelf while you were going through your addiction. But still, I'm thinking, how did you discover to be just brutally honest with yourself and with others? And I'm not saying like, mean or nasty, but I'm saying it's just like, just letting things happen, just be. Like, that integrity, I think that's the most valuable thing we have in recovery, is that integrity, and who are we when no one's watching?
Right.
You seem very consistent, and we call it the Popeye syndrome. I am what I am, and that's all that I am. And I love that, man, because I feel like that's who you are. Was that something you just had growing up, or did you feel like you found that through recovery?
I think I probably learned that from my dad, watching my dad, and, some of my older brothers.
Yeah.
I mean, my older brother, suffers, not my brother has some health issues than me, but I have an older brother, that dealt with a lot of, diagnosed bipolar, not older.
Mm-hmm.
And it hit me kind of hard as a kid, because he was kind of my hero. He was the big brother that everyone wanted, he looked out for me and all my other younger siblings, and he was actually on his mission, he got diagnosed, but he didn't give up.
Mm-hmm.
He kept going back out on his mission, and he actually, I think, fully did the 2 years.
That's incredible.
And, he's married now, got 3 beautiful daughters, and, little things like that. And then, like I talked earlier about my brother Brandon, going after, even though he kept getting told no, he couldn't be a cop because of his health issues, he still pursued it. Started out as being a volunteer out in Saratoga, and now he's a cop.
See?
And, which is cool.
I love that. I love that story more than anything. We live in a world where people want like instant gratification, and who'd think that on your time off, like both of us right now, that we'd be sitting here, still working, so to speak. And I think sometimes we don't realize that, Addict II Athlete, we don't make any money doing this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're a 501c3 nonprofit and people donate, but it goes right back into the program. We're not making buku bucks doing this. And people say, well, how can you be so big without making us? Like, because we're passionate, we'll do it for free. To hear that and for you to have those examples makes more sense to me, because, again, it's, if you want to find your purpose, you've got to really invest in it. You can't just like the idea of your purpose. You've got to go after it. And Brad, I think that that's something too, that when I ask, what do you think the common denominator of failure is? It's, people just don't believe in their own abilities. They don't understand what their purpose is. They get so lost and think they're so broken, and that the man's going to hold them down, that they don't even stand up. And that's definitely not who you are or what you've been a part of, and it's just kind of cool. Being a man of your word, I've watched this, you and your dad kind of came up with a plan, and you decided to change some of your own behaviors because he had some health concerns, and you stopped vaping and all that stuff, and it's like, I know, I was thinking, I wonder how long that'll last. And it's like, dude, it's lasting. So you make up your mind. It's kind of cool too, because you're not a guy that's going to do it just because it's a fad, or like, like when David Clark rolls in and wants us all to be vegan, and I'm like guilty when I'm eating like something around him, like I better not eat. You're not like that. You're just not that person. I mean, me, I'll hide the bacon. You're just like, give me another piece. And I love it, man. Like how, to me, I think that's the coolest thing. How do we avoid, shaming ourselves and stuff. But dude, I just love that you are who you say you are. You're authentic, and that to me, Brad, is why you have so many people that look up to you. And some people look at that as, well, I've climbed so high up on my pedestal, if I fall, it's a long way. You don't look at it that way, do you?
No. I remember years ago I had an individual friend that had passed away from addiction issues, and a mutual friend was messaging me, and he was telling me I was like the poster child of the recovery center I went to as a client. And I just told him, dude, don't call me that, because I'm not, for one, and also like don't boost my ego that much, because I don't want my head blowing up like I can't walk through the door.
Exactly.
I don't want to let myself get to that point. I'm also the type of individual, like, I won't memorize certain things, even when it comes to the 12 steps. I know the base of each step and what it says, but I don't memorize it because I kind of watch a lot of people, and I'm a very observant person.
I noticed that about you.
And I had a first roommate in treatment, and a friend that was in treatment. Big book thumpers. They knew, like, front to back and everything, but I watched them. They couldn't stay sober for the life of them.
Yeah.
I mean, they're both doing well today. One is actually one of my roommates, and create a big influence in my life today, and why I'm pursuing certain things in my life. But that's one thing I was like kind of took to heart. I'm like, well, memorizing stuff doesn't mean anything. Are you actually practicing it?
Exactly.
So,
I like that, man. And that's, to me, I think that's the biggest thing. It's like, let it be part of you. Don't let it be you.
right.
And I think that has to do with everything. I mean, right down to my religion, to my athletics, my family. It's all part of me. It's not who I am. And so, it's kind of funny, talking about religion and that kind of stuff, like, the ecclesiastical positions I've held, I don't wear them on my sleeve because I don't think that's right. I like being able to have people see me for who I am and then make that judgment. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And that's exactly what you're talking about. I think that's absolutely brilliant. I think that's kind of a metaphor for long-term recovery, is continue to stay teachable.
Right.
Don't think you've got it all figured out.
Right.
I think most people don't look at it that way, though. They want to know the inside and outs of everything.
Well, even being a chef in a treatment center, I've had clients come through that have had a lot more experience in the culinary arts field than I have. And I absorb that. I mean, if they want help in the kitchen, that is. And I've actually learned a lot from them. I mean, it might have been before you started up at Mount Peak, but I had a client that she was from Louisiana, and I ended up being her sous chef one day in the kitchen, and she was the main cook making gumbo.
That's
I had never made gumbo, and I probably still have to look at the recipe to even make it.
That's cool.
And it's awesome. And it's with that, and even with stuff regarding recovery and life in general, like, if you don't remain teachable, like, where are you going from
Oh,
there?
man, you know what? You bring up a whole other episode that we could go on to, man, too, because I remember talking to Marissa's mother a lot, and she would, talk to me about recovery and addictions and things and her students and stuff. And Marissa asked me one day, she said, why do you always let her just tell you about recovery and addiction when you know it? I said, well, because A, it's important for her to tell me, and B, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe there's something that she has that I don't know, and I thought, it's kind of funny. I do that a lot, where if, you get to know-it-all people, and I'm like, I'll just listen to you because that's what you want. But there's no sense in trying to shut that down or anything, because you can learn so much, even if you are an expert, in that topic. It's like recovery, like we started off talking about. There's so many different ways. There are things that I agree with the 12 steps. There's things that I don't. But there's things that I agree with religion and things that I don't. There's things that I agree with this team, things that I don't. And so I think that that's what keeps us, able to grow. And so I think that's awesome. Well, Brad, I'm over here looking at the clock, and I'm like, dang, we're pushing 60 minutes already since we just started. But no, I think listeners, it's important for you to hear Brad's story and just the rhythm in which his sobriety kind of was established. And it wasn't all dandelions and lilies. There were struggles there too. But it's some principles that we've learned, which is find your purpose, be a person of your word, remain teachable. Share your story, turn the mess into a message. Do things that are going to really be able to help you become a heavy hitter in this world, because you haven't done anything real special other than just be yourself, I think sometimes we're all crawling and climbing and scratching to get to the top, and it's like, I'll just be down here, you know? I need to get there. Does that make sense? Yeah. Well, Brad, any final thoughts you have for any of these listeners? I mean, anything that you'd give them as tips, especially for that new person who's coming into recovery or even afraid to get into those meetings or stuff? What's the advice to a newcomer you give?
You know, be willing to be open to anything, really. You know, don't listen to your thoughts. Because your thoughts could be your worst enemy. I tell clients this all the time, and I've learned this through my sponsor. You know, because my sponsor actually gave me this practice once on the drive home. He's like, hey, this is a meditation type thing. He's like, on your drive home, just try not to think about anything.
Yeah.
You know how impossible that is?
Yeah, oh, dude, you guys can't, yeah.
You can't just blank out your mind. Something's going to pop up. And it really taught me, like, especially for people early in recovery, if you think about using, like, it doesn't matter. I mean, you lived that lifestyle for how long, and of course that's going to come up.
Yeah.
I mean, especially if you still live in the same city or state that you used to use the substances in. And, but if it's just a thought, you don't act on it, you don't actually go do the act, then it's just a thought.
Yeah, let it go.
And eventually those thoughts get less and less.
I've noticed that.
And then also with, not just that, with using that concept, just negative thoughts. I mean, just at our Christmas party we had, you guys presented a couple of us with some awards. And
yeah, I remember, I think you were one of those most valuable players at Mountain Peak. Yeah, absolutely.
And I remember thinking, like, there's a lot of other people that probably deserve this, you know? But, and it was kind of a negative thought, but it wasn't that as loud as it used to be, 7 years ago. Yeah. And I don't believe it anymore. Yeah. And once you don't believe in it, it kind of dissipates really quickly. Yeah. You know, it's like, you know, I've worked pretty hard, and, you know, I've been here a while. Like, yeah. So. Absolutely. And I think, you know what, though? I think having a fleeting thought like that's a good thing. Because, again, it keeps us humble. Because I feel that way sometimes, too. And, you know, like at our party we had the other day, you know, the year in review, giving all these awards out and stuff, and you know, they gave me a little sign, and I'm like, guys, I'm just the face of this team, you know, and don't give me anything. And it was kind of a cool thing because I do that same thing too, Brad. So I like that, listeners. Those are words of wisdom that I think you can really push into your own recovery and, you know, take to heart. So, Brad, thanks for coming in today, man. And I know you just got off work and you're like, you know, in phase 2 here, but I appreciate your willingness to come in and talk more. And True Alliance, you know, reach out to them. You know, Mountain Peak Recovery. If you find yourself struggling, need some help, come let Brad cook for you. Come let me do some therapy with you. We'll get you shaped up. But athletes, artists,